The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall continue to follow me all the days of this protracted experience of death, and I will dwell in the house of the most super intelligent, power, source, and force of love and creation forever. What's happening? Benton here, interested to see what the day holds. We're on what, Eastern time? It's 6 a.m. Delivery in 12 hours. Delivery appointment is at 6 p.m. This says we'll be there at 10 a.m. and no information on will we be unloaded early. Wow, that was fascinating. Just ran through a gigantic pothole that has a huge piece of metal over it, and the metal became dislodged apparently. Just the truck stops are hazardous to the truck. So hard to see at night in the darkness as well. Ah, yes, now we're leaving the truck stop. So I came in this way last night, and there is no exit. It's one way in and one way out. And immediately was met with a hot shotter pulling a bunch of cars, and he decided that was the exit and that I was in the wrong place. So I just stopped when I see him. What he didn't know is that I got my ass kicked by the traffic for like the last 3 hours after the sun went down. It was horrible, brutal. So I finally, got off my logs, and I would have sat there for 20 minutes. I didn't give a fuck. So he's kind of confused, trying to figure out what to do. Meanwhile, there's a wide open space in front of him. He can loop around and find another way to the exit. And this says something about human nature, right? It's like, oh, that person's in a mode. They're going out that way. Oh, look, somebody's coming in. Like, all right, brother, I'm committed to this path. I have no other. I'm going to turn left towards where he is. So until he moves, I'm not going to go to the right because that's not where I'm going to park. See? Meanwhile, all he's got to do is go straight, bust a right past the pumps, and he's where he's trying to get to anyway. Now, if I was in some kind of hurry, I might throw it in reverse and I might go around the long way. Oh, God. Traffic circles. Hang on. A series of traffic circles. What a nightmare. Anyway. Don't get me started on the traffic circles. I'm going to try not to turn this into a bitch fest. Might even get into some spiritual topics, perhaps. We'll see. So he starts to back up, but then I guess he finally dawns on him that I'm not in his way in the first place. It's like, all right, buddy, I'm just waiting on you, man. I got all day. I made it to here. It's like I'm playing Frogger, you know. I made it to motherfucking safety. I'm not too much in a big hurry to go back to playing Frogger. So he moves out of the way, and right behind him comes another truck. Same thing. He goes to honking the air horn. I'm just looking at him like, now he finally figures it out and squeezes over to the right, you know, to my left. And so once he gets far enough over, I'm happy to wiggle around him. I just kind of look at him like, what are we doing, bro? This is not the exit. I ain't in the exit, man. This is the way in and out. Just because y'all decided it's the exit, I've decided it's the entrance, and I'm here. What is this? And here's how you know it's bad with old Benton. And, you know, I stayed up a little longer than normal, but hell, it was, say, 7:30, 7:45. I mean, that's not too crazy late. I just fucking grabbed my sleeping gear and went to bed, like, immediately, which almost never happens. And, you know, made sure to turn the heat on and everything, since it won't, if you don't turn it on right as you turn the truck off, it just doesn't work. And some of these truck stops, well, and I hit some crazy potholes. I guess maybe the winter, all the snow and the, you know, snow and salt is rough on the roads. I hit some pretty crazy potholes on the interstate on the way here. Where am I? Pennsylvania, headed to Massachusetts, Springfield, Massachusetts. But to me, buying an old truck and taking it out to the oil field and going off roading makes a hell of a lot more sense than trying to buy some decent truck and destroy it with these potholes, man. What the hell? For what? Yeah, the traffic showed me no mercy last night. They descended upon me unceasingly. And the only way I can combat that is to just go slow as fuck, which is what I did. And they still descended upon me and attacked me from every direction. And I knew if I went, I could go balls out and go 70, and they'd just do the same thing. So, and how are these the same humans that are just as happy going 70 as they are going at times 38? Like, how are these all the same people? I'm confused. And it's a spiritual attack, clearly. And I even got angry a couple of times, which it reminds me of my first time, one of my first times through, there was like 40 miles of construction zone and east of Atlanta up into South Carolina. And I remember just punching the steering wheel, just yelling fuck repeatedly, because there's just nowhere to stop. And it's like, oh, there's a truck stop, but you got to try to get back into traffic, you know, in a 1-lane construction zone or whatever. Guess we'll just hold it. Add that to the 20,000 reasons why most people would never do this job, especially not for, you know, effectively minimum wage based on the number of hours that I work. Because after yesterday, that's my 40 hours, 40 hours plus in 4 days. And I'm working 7. So it's 93 hours, and anything beyond that, it's less than minimum wage. What's up, Glenn? Yeah, we forgot to turn the chat off, so I guess we'll leave the chat on unless the bozos show up. Once the demons start posting, I'll have to turn it off. Just too distracting. And part of me likes to argue with them too much. Talk about a fool there, and a little tired still from yesterday. Nothing too crazy though. As long as I get sleep, I'm pretty much good to go. But any version of night driving, which it's taken this long for the company to halfway understand that I don't mean wake up at 1 a.m. and start driving. That's not nighttime to me. That's morning. Nighttime is once that sun goes down and it's 7:30. That's the middle of the fucking night for me, right? I'm trying to go to sleep about five or six. It's not worth the drain. Oh, that's a man. He can fuck himself. I thought that was a truck at first. Y'all get over for the truck. You're on your own, Bubba. Slow and steady, man. Well, and part of this also is that I fucked up and delayed our delivery when I left my ID at the truck stop, and we lost almost 5 hours to me going back for my ID. So, and I've driven 5 extra hours. So, in fact, now that I think about it, I've done some unnecessary work. But either way, and I'm still confused. Apparently, we set this appointment. Apparently, the broker asked us what time are we going to deliver, and then they set the appointment with the customer. And me and my dispatcher did it on the phone, just sort of on the fly, which is not my forte, and that's what we came up with, which is way off. I don't know. I think noon would have been. I'd have said 2 p.m. Really. I mean, even knowing what I know, because it's still contingent upon me making 600 miles yesterday, which I was pretty sure I would do, but it's not a given. I don't know. I don't know what we're doing. Virtually my entire trucking career, I get a time to go pick up, and then I get a time to deliver and a date. I don't get well, when are you going to be there? It's like, well, I don't know. How the fuck would I know when I'm going to be there? Thought y'all told me when to be there. The hell is this? So as we know, 6 p.m. is basically my bedtime. So hopefully, they will unload me early. And that's again part of the torture of trucking. If the driver allows it to be torture, is why can't I know these things? Why is it not knowable that you got a pretty damn good chance of them unloading you early? And in fact, some of the reason why we had to set such a late appointment is I had a 10 a.m. pickup, and if they take 3 hours and I don't hit the road till 1, then I'm trying to drive 600 miles, and now I'm probably having to stop and take a nap. And so I guess 6 p.m. really was like a worst case scenario. So it makes sense from that standpoint why we chose that, now that I think about it. And yeah, a lot of just attackers. And this is kind of their driving style in the Northeast, but it's just I just don't understand the need to attack the other vehicles. I think it's gotten worse with you know, everybody, not everybody, but the masses being so angry and they're not really in touch with their anger. And, um, I'm detecting a lot of aggression. It's just like, it's not even passive aggression. It's just like aggression, impersonal aggression. Just, hey, look, there's a person. Let's just walk right towards it and make it move out of the way. And it's like, well, that's a depressed 25-year-old fat chick pushing a cart for Walmart, shopping so they can come pick it up in the parking lot. And I'm just going to yell, coming through out the way. And just, so she makes just enough room for me to get by on the right. She's trying to cross me up, and I'm not even angry. The old me would have been mad. Now it's just like, this is just what people do now. But it's intentional. See, it's not, oh, what's the big deal? Maybe she's moved her cart because that's where I was. Because it's not aggression if there's not a person. When I go to a super center and I can't even get from one side, the front door, I go all the way back to the sporting goods and I'm coming back to the grocery side. When I can't even make all of that without encountering 8 different people and 6 of them just are directly walking at me, right? That's not just, that means something. That's a thing, right? And I can then make some educated guesses as to what may be going on inside of those people, right? Even the guy at the Loves, cleaning up the bathroom, and I'm almost done at the sink, and I don't want to be in there in the first place. I have to talk myself into going into the bathroom. And finally, it's just like, I haven't rinsed my eyeballs out in a couple of days. It's like, this has to happen eventually. And then he wants to come mop by my feet. And I'm just like, hey, he's like, hey, can I get over there? I'm like, hey, man, give me a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. I'll be out of your way. And again, I'm not angry, but I'm fairly aggressive by nature. And then, so he's basically like, and then, the truth comes out. He's like, yeah, I'm just trying to get out of this bathroom. I'm like, oh, yeah, me too. I understand. I'm just helping you out, And I said, I didn't mean to come at you all crazy, but I'm a truck driver. I just woke up, cranky old man. And then again, it's the aggression. He's probably not an aggressive type. And, males aren't even really, anybody's not really allowed to be aggressive. It's not socially acceptable, They've been taught in school that, rambunctiousness from a boy is oppressive to women. Like, for real, that's what they're taught. Well, I ain't the one, Bubba. You found the wrong one. But I don't care, I'm affable. It's like, yeah, man, just give me a couple seconds. I'll happily scoot the fuck. And I know, I think I said something like, yeah, some people would just stand here all day. I watched a guy, just some foreigner in another world, brushing his teeth for, I mean, who even knows? Had his phone playing music. He just posted up in that back corner where it's the only sink that, I guess, for handicapped people, you got to be able to manually turn it on so you can get the water will continue to flow perpetually. And again, it's not my business, but finally, after the whole time I'm in there, he's over there brushing his teeth and the water's just running. I'm like, hey, man, turn that water off. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Come on, man. Takes a lot for me to say something to somebody. Turn it back on when you need it. What the hell? Uh, is that what they do with the? They probably do. The women go down to the well and come back with buckets of water, and they probably do waste that shit. The men probably waste it all, right? But apparently, since I'm going to pick up some of our direct customer freight, I think it's already a day late. Because apparently the loads was ready yesterday. And I guess they were trying to hustle me up there so I could get there yesterday and roll out early this morning, but it wasn't possible. Because they were even talking about giving me like a 400, a short run, and then just deadheading me the rest of the way. But once I had to go back for my wallet, that fucked that all up. And again, I have a job where on purpose they don't tell me anything. I'm on a need to know basis. Right. Which is kind of, it's freeing for me in a way, because then I just do whatever, most of the time I just more or less do whatever suits me. And if they try to protest, it's like, yeah, y'all didn't tell me that. I mean, how am I supposed to prepare for some things, when y'all don't tell me? And then when I first started, they wanted to see if I would just run my clock out every day and run as hard as possible. And it was basically like, well, then I quit. I mean, I'm not interested in doing that. I have no interest in every 7 days a week, beating the fuck out of my clock. And half the time it's not even going to be necessary. It's like, no, I quit. Then I quit. I'm not doing that. Y'all are crazy. Fallen Trooper, Memorial Highway. Would he slip and fall on a load of banana peels? Somebody rolled their trailer? Zero listening. I like it. Mission accomplished. That's my goal now. And y'all think I'm joking. Well, I don't know what you're thinking. You may think I'm not joking. My goal is 0 concurrent listeners. And maybe it'll go to a 1 every now and then. I'm just talking at this point. I don't have the energy. I'm no longer angry enough. Somebody help EBT, by the way. Y'all know this Enslaved by Truth? Well, of course you don't. Nobody's listening to this. And see, I get to just talk like it's an audience of 1. It's me, motherfuckers. It's the royal me, motherfuckers. What are we doing here, fella? And he was live. I think he probably already passed out drunk, but he was watching a feller playing a banjo, and the banjo player had on some kind of death skull mask and like a black hoodie and gloves with the skeleton hands on the gloves. And EBT years ago during COVID was, I was all the time getting accused of being a doomer. I posted full doomer. I posted full doomer in his chat. I'd like to call in if he's still conscious, but I'm trying to keep it moving here. Oh, we got a live one. We went from the 0 to the 1. Sir, madam, baby, child, whatever. We're trying to stay at 0, so you're welcome to stay, but please understand the goal of the streamer is now to, as often as possible, have that 0 viewing. So maybe I'll be interesting later, perhaps. So it's a commitment of energy, certainly, and there's a certain amount of anger and frustration and really angst, I think would be the proper term, required for some of these streams that I just don't have anymore, thankfully. The evolution, the internal bootstrapping, old Benton perhaps has ascended beyond being able to perform live streams. Thank you. They left, but they came back. Maybe it's somebody different. Either way. And I'm starting to figure out a lot of these truckers, they really do drive based on, can they find somebody to speed for them so they can, because this guy, for some reason, he was going slow as fuck. And in my general vicinity, and I guess he finally realized, wow, this guy's really just going to go 45. And he finally got away from me, and now he's going like a normal speed. It's a 65 zone, So he finally, but it took him about 10 minutes. I really had to prove to him, yeah, buddy, I'm not going to haul balls. So some of it is they play possum, and then once you start to pass them, they gradually speed up and speed up and speed up. And most people, once they commit to a pass, won't back out of it. So the next thing you know, you're going 70, 75 and a 65, so that they don't, makes it less likely that they'll get a speeding ticket. Says a lot about society. It says a lot about people. Because it's, this idea of we're all in this together. Well, I mean, not really. Not if I'm expected to take other people's speeding tickets. That doesn't seem fair. What kind of rational, well-adjusted, emotionally healthy person would want anything to do with America? And I only say America because this is where I'm from. I don't see, and it's been this way for a long time. It's probably been this way, my entire so-called life. I don't see anything desirable, worth having. What is it really that rewarding? The white picket fence, the 1.5 children, and a mortgage and car payments and consumer credit / debt, feminism, which people have not understood, and they think we'll find a trad wife. Well, society's feminist. You can find a wife that labels herself however you want. She went to a university, her public indoctrination center, she's been taught feminism. And all of her peers were taught feminism, and everybody at her job is taught feminism. Oh yeah, that thing she has to work because we're all traditional. And well, traditionally, your wife didn't have a job, sir. I mean, yeah, she maybe, had a side hustle, but my mom didn't have a job. Are you crazy? We weren't rich. My dad earned a high income relative to where we live for a time. She was willing to work. She worked in the family business to some extent. And can men even pull it off, right? Some can, as we see, some can't. A lot can't. It's like, yeah, how's a fella gonna have a trad wife when he can't be a trad dad or whatever? He's playing video. You know what? My dad never did play the video game, right? Actually, my dad didn't do anything fun that I can recall. Rarely, if ever. He worked. He was responsible. He was brainwashed. And now when I interface with the public, it's brainwashing. I'm interfacing with brainwashing. And so, the idea of preaching or, some version of that, and I do still preach from time to time, maybe even in a super center briefly, perhaps in Kentucky, where it's, folks will at least respect the message, even if they don't pick up what I'm putting down necessarily, but I'm quite skilled at it. But then this world will say, "Oh, good, make that into your vocation, make that into your identity. Get a few followers and supporters and a schoolie, right? A school bus that's been converted with living quarters and go drive around." And it's like, yeah, that's called homeless vagabond begging. It's like, yeah, I've done that, but it becomes okay if we do some preaching. The hell? I don't get it. And I'm not even saying it's not okay to travel around as a homeless vagabond beggar. To me, you know, that's preferable to slaving away for a rich corporation. And the healing, man, the healing is still a big deal. Further healing is happening, and still putting off the fasting. The fasting is going to have to happen at some point. I don't know when. And the reality is, there's no, how is it that I've never just run into somebody who's, on undergoing some path of transformation and, spiritual practice that's not tied to organization, or they're just doing it because, well, they are here seemingly, and what else are they going to do? I mean, that realistically, that's how I got to a lot of what I've been through, or what I put myself through. Is like, well, I'm here. I mean, what the fuck else am I going to do? Try to get rich? Try to make other people rich? Right? Amusements, so-called pleasures of the dead flesh, that only goes so far, right? And then I watch people, man, and what I find kind of sad and hard to accept is that a lot of these people in the general public, like, they sort of see parts of, it's this idea of beyond the veil, or they see, now we see through a glass darkly. They see certain aspects of things that are incongruous, that are, they see the waking dream, surrealistic, unreality, deja vu all over again. But, they don't have a means to reconcile that And I mean, definition of the word reconcile, which is okay, right? Understanding, having a grasp of one of the philosophies attributed to Jiddu Krishnamurti, it's okay that they don't have a solution. However, what he would say is the lack of reconciliation is not a problem. It's when the person doesn't understand the dynamics and doesn't realize that they're creating problems for themselves based on an inability or a failure to reconcile and integrate. And ultimately, what I'm talking about is integration within my own systems, within myself, as much as possible, for, and in service of the spirit of what I am, right? In a way that, in a matter of perspective, is the most, it's just wholly selfish, and to even reconcile that, well, yeah, I understand that sounds negative. And the moment somebody says it sounds negative, well, I need to examine, well, does that mean it's inappropriate? Does that mean it can't be engaged in because it sounds negative or inappropriate? Like, so that means we can't. And to me, that's evidence of, well, that's probably the proper path, or in the direction of the proper path, if there is such a thing as the proper path. I mean, even that concept is going to have its issues. And then what sort of insane person is going to want to and be willing to subject themselves to examining each and every one of these individual phenomena enough to break them down into their constituent parts? It's like, well, Benton will do that, has done it, and is continuing to do it for his own benefit, and is making it work. And that's what, the enemy can't do anything about this. Other people, the peanut gallery, I'm making it work, right? I'm what I am is victory. And this is the victory is brought forth with logic, reason, and in a rational way based on my performance, in a world of death within games of lies. And so back to the idea of people, so-called piercing the veil, and now they see through a glass darkly at times, but then it's too incongruous to them, and it threatens their own ability to conform to and to function in society. And that is slavery. Slavery is when the being is going to do anything and everything required to function in the society. That is slavery. That's psychological slavery, that's physical slavery, and that's spiritual slavery. And that's what that is. And what I am, Benton, it's one thing after the unlocking of the achievement of true knowledge of self, but how did Benton bring himself to the point of unlocking that was, well, a suspicion and hints that perhaps that's the way it was, that this life is void and contains not anything of meaning or value or substance, this so-called life. In the external realm, and the idea of the kingdom of air quote so-called God is within me, so maybe I'll go look for it. And then the normie will always be undone because they are not able to boldly go within themselves. It's too disorienting, and they need to join a herd or a pack or a group outside of themselves. And because of the predatory nature of the dead flesh, any entity that they seek outside of themselves will use them for its own purposes 100% of the time. So what I'm realizing is that, if and there certainly already is ministry, but if there's going to be a more, regularly performed, somewhat formalized ministry, with Mr. Benton here, it's ad hoc grassroots, get in where you fit in, but it's going to be other people serving, not me serving common ideas, but to direct their own efforts inwardly, and to the service is more so in the initiate stages when they don't really know they're not really good for anything anyway. They don't really know anything. Right. And so they would have a function of, hey, this person they don't know their head from a hole in the ground, but we can't, the royal we can trust them with the coin purse. And Benton is quickly approaching a level of, it's at some point in the near future, it's probably going to be inappropriate for me to even handle money. Right. I'm not there yet. I can't even say thankfully, just not there yet. And it seems to me like part of getting there will be the circumstances must change. Right now, that's not. And part of that is, to find the type of people who would be willing to serve a bozo like me. It's going to be, well, what do they get out of it? Well, what they get out of it is they want to join a cult, and they want to be underneath a strong personality, authoritative cult leader type, such as me. And again, I'm not saying I'm that type. I'm saying that my personality lends itself to some of those dynamics. And now, 5 versions of Benton ago, might have been interested in such a dynamic, except that he was raised up in a mind control cult called the Jehovah's Witnesses that I never joined, and I got broken very early on of any notions of, because I recognized, this is what a cult is. This is, to be the cult leader. The problem with being the leader of a cult is, yes, there are certain advantages if a person's interested in the pleasures of the flesh. However, the cult leader spends almost all of his time or her time with the type of people who would freely join a cult. Like, yeah, no thanks. Oh, excuse me. No, thank you. Did my time around those bozos. And there's no shortcuts, really. Like, the only shortcut is if somebody really wanted to work on their own inner bootstrapping, to be around somebody like me who could be consulted and okay, well, they're moving from the beginner stage of meditation to more of an intermediate stage, and they probably have questions or challenges, and could be like, okay, how did you deal with this? And because, listen, I don't care if y'all believe me, I'm a fucking high level expert meditator. I'm one of the best in the motherfucking world. I'm just going to go ahead and put my fucking name on it. I'm one of the best, most highly skilled practitioners of meditation who's if you want to call it life and you want to call this a world, of the people walking around, I'm one of the best. I'm probably top 100 in the world at meditation. And yeah, I'll put my name on that. And meaning I'm ready to prove it. Back when, if anybody knows this, Nachiketa, when he did Vipassana, 10-day Vipassana retreat. Well, number one, I was the only person who knew what Vipassana was. I've read the fucking, you can go to their website. They've got a PDF file, a couple of different, I've read their writings, at least the one or two main writings, the PDFs you can download on their website. I've familiarized myself with the material. I've studied up on what would this 10-day retreat involve. How is it conducted? I knew all about it. And so, I'm a cocky type anyway. And I was, he went and did this, and I was basically like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I could go do that and it wouldn't be too difficult. And then, I sort of backed off of that because he's done several and I haven't done any. So it's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I saw that it was he checked me a little bit. It's sort of inappropriate because I'm sort of dismissing the difficulty of what he accomplished, but that was 3 or 4 years ago. I'm pretty sure I could just go and do that standing. Basically what I said was, oh yeah, I could do that standing on my head. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could have. I'm pretty sure I could right now. I could probably conduct I could probably do one or two and then start leading them. And I think maybe he's led a couple of them. It's like, yeah, these are human. It's just nothing special, man. These are human fucking beings. I mean, whoever that is that sits on the fucking raised platform and, meditates, but, he's an expert at meditation. And some of the people who take the 10-day course are more or less brand new to it. I mean, who cares? It's fairly mundane. And also, who cares? Like, do you think I give a fuck? It just sort of occurred to me, I'm probably one of the best motherfuckers there is at this. And by the way, who cares? Right? Who cares? So what? And while understanding most people, if they hear me say that, it's a turnoff. Well, how's that my problem? I'm not trying to attract anybody into joining anything or buying my fucking seminar. Do you really think by now I couldn't fucking write a 2-day seminar and start booking motherfuckers, into some Holiday Inn somewhere? And like a convention, like a conference room, start with 20 or 30 and before you know it, it'll be 100, 200 people. Why? For money? I'd rather drive this truck and mostly be left the fuck alone. Glad hand with a bunch of bozos. Ah, yes. Fuck yeah, that's right. Scam, bankster, fraud in the house. Well, that's quite the Edward Snowden, the bankster fraud. I like and we know it doesn't negate it, right? It's official fiction. None of this is completely real anyway, but the Edward Snowden, the idea that he sacrificed himself to let the American people know what was going on with the surveillance. And because if anybody knows anything about Snowden, he, as a character, he's portrayed as a very patriotic and idealistic young man. Some of that was connected to the 2001 terrorist attacks in Manhattan or New York or wherever. Pat Tillman got swept away in that. Also, I could do an hour on Tillman, and that's an interesting deal there. And a lot of people, even in the so-called truth community, never really got to the bottom of the Tillman stuff. There's a lot of lessons in that. I learned a lot from his story, certainly. I mean, go look at a picture of Pat Tillman, and then look at these on YouTube, these operators, right? You can go listen to any number of people that claim to have been Delta Force or whatever. And maybe they were, I don't fucking know what they were and don't care, but, and, you know, a Jocko Willink or whatever. And then go watch, just Google, YouTube search, Pat Tillman fucking football highlights and watch him out there playing in the NFL and kicking ass. And, you know, this idea that he turned down a pretty lucrative contract to continue in the NFL, to join him and his brother join the Army to go Army Ranger to go fight in Iraq and Afghanistan. And just look at Pat Tillman in his uniform. And that, you know, that's one of, you want to talk about the idea of a handsome, square jawed, all American type. I mean, that he's the fucking archetype, not Jocko, right? You know, it's Pat Tillman from California, you know, something of a surfer boy. I think they said he rode his bicycle to the football practices, you know, one of them kind of a Bill Walton, Phil Jackson type in a way. And, you know, sort of a free spirit bohemian, but tough as fucking nails too, and intelligent and, you know, principled and all of these things. And didn't realize what the Army did to him. Some of what they did to him after he passed away by refusing to honor his wishes that he gave them in writing. And then there's also, it ties into the power of motherhood and in some ways the ineffectual nature of fatherhood at times. Because you got to figure, you know, Pat Tillman's dad's probably a bad motherfucker on some level. And it's actually his mom's the badass, not, now his dad's no fucking panty waste, clearly, but mom was the badass. And that's what's not even understood about manhood. And why does a man have a boner when he sees a fat ass or some fat titties? And excuse my graphic language here, but it's to spread her genetics as far as possible. That's the entire biological imperative. It's for the man to sow his seed, right, with multiple women. I mean, and this is what the body wants to do. I'm not talking about society or religion or the Bible or, you know, what's considered to be a good idea or a bad idea. I'm talking about what the dead flesh is trying to accomplish. And so, you know, the part of procreation that the woman holds sway over and her decision making, it's based on not having girls. Now, as we see, there's this idea of girl dads, and, you know, society's starting to really venerate, you know, the idea of daughters, which I don't have a problem with personally. I've always liked girls and women, but still do. But you know, that's what's going on with the female dead flesh is, you know, to become impregnated and to then have specifically a son who will have the opportunity to spread the genes the farthest. Well, you know, if you look at a Pat Tillman, I would say, you know, not across the board, but, you know, that's somebody that a particular subset of women, that's going to be kind of their ideal in a way, or one of them, you know. And then what type of person, you know, and he was probably brainwashed to some extent before he ever went into the military. And then he was supposedly, according to his diary or his own letters he had written home, his plan was to get out of the military, to serve his tours, to get out of the military, and then to more or less to speak out against the wars, you know, based on, in part on, and he would, of course, not necessarily viewed as the system, I don't think really views it as a threat to the system, The system is incentivized to utilize and to subvert those type of folks to serving its purposes. Well, some people just can't be used in that. Now they can be and he was certainly partially used, and they did partially use him in a way. And so what happened was, this is how Pat Tillman died. His death was, he was shot between the eyes by one of his fellow Army Rangers at about 30 yards while looking directly at the man who shot him while yelling, "I'm Pat fucking Tillman." And it was later, it was initially chalked up to friendly fire. Actually, first they said the enemy, then it was like, oh, friendly fire. And then finally, because of his badass mom, managed to spiritually force the government into investigating itself and releasing enough of the records. And she looked into the records enough, and they finally unearthed that was how he died. And then there was a prosecution of the individuals that were involved in murdering him on the battlefield and then burning his body armor and his personal journals on the spot of his death. And Pat Tillman was such a badass, he requested permission to drop his body armor and physically run right up a cliff face, because he was a physical fucking specimen, because apparently the enemy had achieved a higher position. And, the Rangers were come under fire in some kind of valley or whatever. And I'm not familiar with the terrain. I'm not a military tactician, but military minded certainly. And he was going to save the day by dropping his body armor and just running directly up to the enemy position by himself. And then just, if whatever happens, happens. And then to realize, if he's the only Army Ranger, at least on scene, who's physically able to do that, his fellow soldiers aren't going to say, "Oh, well, thank God we got a Pat Tillman." They're going to say, "Well, we're jealous. Why? Because he can do something we can't do. We don't like him. We go out trying to womanize, and all the girls go talk to him." Right? Jealousy, man. Jealousy and envy. Again, in the world, not of the world. Well, Pat Tillman was a avowed atheist and not, non-religious, and I don't think even claimed spirituality, but perhaps that was part of his own undoing. And showing something about the character of the family, his brother served out his brother after Pat was murdered. His brother Kevin served out the rest of his commitment, and certainly would have been allowed to leave early. There you go. Yeah. Yeah, double tap Tillman, exactly. They double tapped his ass, didn't they? They said, "Oh, here's Mr. NFL." Right. Here's Mr. NFL. You think you going G.I. Joe out here, greatest American hero? We got something for your ass. But in this world of death and game of lies, what if he was a different NFL player? What if he was a Aaron Hernandez type? And the stories of what he was up to in New England. And because he was so good at football, they just basically let him do whatever he wanted, including apparently the guy would masturbate in some of the team meetings. And just And every once in a while, there's one of these NFL players that he's so fucking scary and mean and nasty. The other players are scared of him, right? And the coaches are, maybe they're not scared, but they know, well, there's no Hernandez is playing his ass off, and just leave him the fuck alone. You know, Lawrence Taylor had a little bit of that going on, and it's kind of funny. But Tillman, thinking that he and really Tillman's, Tillman's flaw was in his earnestly believing that America existed as described, right? And my own father still believes that. He just believes that it used to exist. And then, so what happens with him is the more my father learns about just how far back, the Freemason origins go, and this goes and that goes, he moves the goalposts further and further back to where now it's like, because of Paul Craig Roberts blaming everything on Lincoln, now my dad has turned into one of these Southerners who just blames it all on, it's all Lincoln's fault, apparently. And it'll go back even further than that at some point, I would assume. But man, he was born in 55. It was not America. Now, I don't know. Was it ever America? I'm beginning to suspect that America's always been a psyop and brainwashing and something that existed, only in the minds of the people, if at all. And, whatever it's like in 2026 is exactly what it was like in 1960 in this country. It's just the only differences is that what the machine was perpetrating, Moloch's machine was perpetrating and perpetuating through the subversion of the creative force of what I am, it was different. And it was because that's on a timeline and a progression. So what the system needed the people to perform was different than what it needs them to perform now. Everything else is versions of the same shit. Poor folks slaving away to make rich people rich. That was 1960. It was 1970. It was 1980. It was 1990. It was 2000. It was 2010. It was 2020. It'll be 2030. Now, some would say, well, it was even earlier than 1960. Yeah, I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm saying I'm drawing a line in the sand at 1960 and saying, look, that's 15 years before I was born. My dad was 5 or 6. And it was, I'll bet everything I own that it was basically what it is now by 1960. So, I mean, what do you need to know? Right? When did Vietnam start? Korea was over. And I'm not a historian. Korea, you had World War II, and then, that was such an afterglow. And said, well, shit, let's go, And I what I've realized is half of the Korean War was just motherfuckers who sort of missed out on the glory of World War II. Said, well, shit, what do y'all got for us? All right, well, we'll send y'all to Korea then, and go get some of that. And that didn't really work out for anybody at the level of, and half of that, some of that was the double dipping of the World War II vets. And I think a few even managed to catch a little, maybe even you had a couple folks that caught the tail end of WW2, Korea, and then the start of Vietnam. You fucking goddamn trifecta, man. You didn't hit the trifecta. Cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. Motherfuckers trying to follow slow trucks. They realize they can't go, they can't drive 55. That must be Sammy Hagar in that car. So if you look at the 80s and this into the 90s, this period of time that's inappropriately romanticized, in my view, you know, I mean, that's the Rust Belt. You know, that's the 1980. You know, that's already, you know, you're well into, you know, go watch any number of YouTube videos of what, you know, Dayton, Ohio looks like, or Youngstown, Ohio, or just name a place, Cleveland. Now you got to find somewhere that hasn't already been revitalized to some extent, you know. And then people want to poo-poo the cities, but you know, with some exceptions, you know, look at a Boston. You know, I don't know Boston well, but it seems to be maintained at some level of, you know, because look at what supposedly went on in New York City in the 70s and the 60s. The 60s and the 70s into the 80s, you know, the idea of, you know, you can go watch stuff on YouTube where it's films from parts of New York that looks way worse than anything I've ever seen out of Detroit. And that is America. You know, you've got middle America and certain rural small town folks, and you know, what's more American than New York motherfucking city, man? What's more American than Los Angeles? You know, what's more American than, you know, somebody driving a combine out in a, you know, wheat field or whatever, you know, Nebraska Cornhuskers and all of these things. It's all very much American. If you're going to love America, it's to love all of that, you know. And I'm not even saying anybody should or could or would love America. I'm saying I said if. And see, I play off of me. See, most of these humans are so lost, they need something else to play off of. I play off of me, right? So somebody comes slow merging. I don't want to deal with it, so I slow down, and then it turns out there's two people behind me playing off of me, and I haven't even seen them yet. So now they go flying around, and they're hanging out, making a convoy because they have to have something outside of themselves to play off of, right? Well, I found out at an early age that what's inside of me, that's plenty to work with. You know, and I understand not everybody's got it like I do. And that comes with its own set of challenges and its own problems, and sure, but and every man hath not the same office. But, you know, again, I don't want anything to do with these people. But then, you know, there's a lot of truth in movies, right? Like that There Will Be Blood, and you know, the Daniel Plainview character talking to that guy that he temporarily thought was his long lost brother that was a con artist, and you know, he's got somebody. Plainview's very guarded and private, and he's got somebody he can share something with, you know, and talks about something about, I don't know how, just basically not wanting to do these things with these people, you know, and you know, that's his disdain for his fellow man, right? You know, I don't know how to, and I forget the phraseology, but the message was clear, right? So, but that he recognized that he had, in order to do what he's doing in life, he's dependent upon those people, and those people are dependent upon him to some extent, you know, jobs and money and all of these things. symbiotically, right? Um, and sometimes it's difficult to tell the difference between symbiosis and predation, right, or something predatory. That can be a fine line, certainly. Well, what I am will not prey upon anything. Prey. See, and the spiritual surrender. What is the spiritual surrender? It's surrendering to the righteousness that may very well dwell within. And that it could be within you. It could be within you. I don't know. I can't know. And honestly, I'm not that curious. Now, if it's there, I would like to see people find it, uncover it. Meanwhile, what does the Bible say? And what did Christ supposedly say in the Bible? There will be many false Christs. Well, what would a false Christ be in that context other than someone who maybe even believes their own bullshit, who looked for righteousness within themselves, thought they found it, and now they're running around LARPing as Jesus Christ, and they've because because part of the dead flesh is that there is a great deal of people who want to follow supreme righteous authority, who either don't know to look within themselves, or many just are unable to. And I think this is part of where the Eastern or the Hindu, a lot of these ideas around um, reincarnation and all of this, many beings obviously just will never in this life. It's a bridge too far. There's just not enough time, within delusion for them to, within a limited time span for them to, even if it's there, it's going to it's just too much involved in uncovering it. It's just not going to happen. But if there's a desire and there is clearly something in the human that responds to those dynamics, well, the false Christ will use that in a predatory fashion to, again, engage in the pleasures of the flesh and to magnify itself, right? And to seek for itself. And at the end of the day, a big part of the Christ deal is it is something that seems arrogant. It's like, yo, what I am is there's nothing greater than what I am. That's it. There's nothing greater than that. So once the being is fully in that knowledge, what else is there? There is no attainment. There can't be an attainment. There is no lack. There can only be lack by a curse is required to even affirm lack, because lack is only affirmable if the being is willing to treat blessing or highest supreme value as if it were of the lowest value and as if it were a curse, which is blasphemy in the Holy Spirit. So only by committing, within this delusory dualistic realm, what would be considered, the only so-called unforgivable sin, only that mechanism, enables the so-called illuminated, and that's not even the right term, the self-realized master, And see, there can't be we can't have the honor system. I should never, I'm not supposed to take Saul of Tarsus's word for it. Nobody's supposed to take my word for it when Benton claims certain attainments. It is its own reward. My cup runneth over. The continuous overflow of the Spirit, right? Worshipper and object of worship contained within the same space. That's a fully contained system. It doesn't, there is no need. There can't be dependence or need. What I am can't be dependent on this world for anything. And if other people, you know, their trip is their trip, I'm not involved. So, I can speak on what I know till I'm blue in the face. So what? I'm not allowed to use it, because the moment that that knowledge or that attainment is willing to use it to manipulate and to extract from other people, it becomes antichrist or blasphemy in the Holy Spirit. And that's the every knee shall bow, make the tree good or make the tree rotten. It's a crossover, right? And so that was the key part of, Satan supposedly tempting Christ in the desert. It's, hey man, cross over from Christ to Antichrist. You're here now, might as well have a good time. And that's the offering of the kingdoms of the world. It's not so much an acknowledgement that, all the world lies in the hand of the wicked one. That's not the point of that story. The point of that story is Christ being champion of ascension can also, if he chooses, could have been a champion of going to the depths and becoming the lowest of the low, right? To become self-seeking, to become satanic, to become antichrist, see? And could flip a switch and do it, would know how to do it. And that's part of to me, that's the symbology of after crucifixion and after entombment, before arising from the dead and being seen publicly. What did Christ do in the story? He traveled through the underworld, right? And certainly would have been able to express in the underworld, having mastered, right, the higher forms, would have been able to operate in the so-called underworld at a level of mastery, as above, so below. And more or less, as far as I can tell, traveled the underworld just to show, hey, this ain't nothing. I'm fucking doing the backstroke through this motherfucker. You have, ideas of the Egyptians and Ra and fucking all of these things, and, Osiris and the Egyptians, and this, the boat, and pay the fucking ferryman to cross this fucking the river Styx, and, all of this underworld symbology or symbolism. And then imagine being down in that world, and then you look over as you paid, the Ra or whoever's. And again, I don't know these stories, so I'm sure I'm butchering some of this, but, getting ferried in one of them funky looking boats across that river or down that river, and looking over and saying, what's that in the water? And that's the Lord Christ Jesus doing the motherfucking backstroke, fucking down the river, and the water coming out, spitting water out of his mouth like a fountain. And just going, hey, this ain't nothing. What's happening? What's happening, Ra or whoever? What's happening, partner? Oh shit, that's the Lord. That's Christ over there. I'll be damned. Yeah, you wouldn't be. Say, I'll be damned. Yeah, you would be, if not already. Yeah, good job, little four wheelers. Y'all sure are normalizing the fuck out of slow big rigs. Slow big rigs on a hill climb. Well, y'all are doing a great. Y'all deserve a pat on the head. Y'all are normalizing the fuck out of that by slowing down and accompanying them and forcing me to slow down so that just the first one I happened to notice as I passed it. But well, that's fascinating. And no, they didn't get knocked off. They're intentionally not there. Well, hell, they're probably ordering them that way now. Probably the truck came like that. And so once the being, in this case, Mr. Benton, ascends within himself to those levels within himself, you know, I can't pretend to be what the bozos are. Right now, I will, here and there for fakery. But here's the thing is, the people that I interface with, they on some level, they know what it is because, the subconscious mind perfectly decodes all symbols. It's known, if not in the conscious, it's certainly not in the conscious mind in the majority of cases. But, and of course, the demons, they may not say, like in the Bible, well, there's the Lord, and, get fearful and have you come to destroy us and all of this. It's not the time. I understand it ain't that. But again, the resurrection of the risen, ascended Christ within me, AKA a righteous man. And that's the lie of Christianity. The greatest lie of Christianity is that that's not possible because of Saul of Tarsus. The subversion of the story of Saul / Paul. That's it's lies, man. That's demonic. The Bible's demonic. It just is. Don't kill the messenger. The Bible is demonic. That's not there's aspects of it. It's at least partially demonic. Everything here, other than what I am, is partially demonic. Everything. There's nothing here. Everything that traces its origins to this world of death and these games of lies is demonic. Just period. End of story. Contains elements of the demonic. I didn't make it that way. Well, why you're mad at me? If you are. Yeah, no mirrors. It's a trip. And the camera is perfectly mounted where the mirror would attach to the truck, which leads me to believe Freightliner's now letting them order the tractor from the factory like that. And you'll probably start to see a lot of other companies, big companies, go to the same type of deal. Here come the state popo, the state police. What state am I in? New York? New York. We are in New York. Just barely. Only for a brief time. Anyway. Yeah, he's turning around through the median. Time for a donut break, maybe. You're not hanging out with me. Now some car's confused by the whole business. You're not hanging out with me, buddy. I don't know what to tell you. Just because you saw a cop, now you're going to hang out with me? I don't understand. You were passing me till you saw the state trooper. How about you get the fuck away from me like you were already doing? I don't understand. What are we doing? I'm ready to just pack it in on some level. So, and clearly what I would prefer, what my dead flesh prefers is not the order of the day, clearly. So it ain't even up to me. That's another spiritual surrender. All right. What's the difference? Why concern myself with what the trucking company is going to try to do to me? Surrender to that. I'm free to walk away at any time. Or I can tell them, yeah, I'm quitting for the third time, but they'll probably just talk me out of it. So that seems silly to even, why even go there? So at this point, it's, if I was willing to risk an abandonment, that would, for all intents and purposes, end my trucking career unless I got desperate enough to, go to your Western Expresses of the world or whoever, whatever shitty company would still take me with an abandonment on the permanent record. Anyway, this watermelon doesn't look very good, but we'll see. Try it, a little bit of it. Kind of curious. That's fine. Fair to middling. Anyway, that's enough out of me. Bye.